I looked fine. I didn't know what to do. I was exhausted, sleeping 11 hours, brain fog, sores in my mouth with pain. I was a single mom at the time as well, and I had muscle atrophy, bedridden half the time. It was a horrible situation. And I lived far away in Florida, which was a blessing by Dr. Mojka at that time. So with that, not knowing what to do, and I had a holistic background, ate gluten-free, dairy-free, drank tons of water, and I heard about Dr. Mojka and from a friend, so I booked an appointment. And one of the first things after she did some tests on me is she said, "You're dehydrated." I was like, I drink a gallon of water about a day. Fiji, Evian, and she's like, exactly. And I was big into supplements and food, but I really didn't know about water. I didn't know there was really any difference, about water. And when she said I was dehydrated, I was like, well, tell me a little bit more about this water. And tell me about your patients. And she said she had hundreds of patients that have been drinking this water that have improved their health greatly just by adding this to their lifestyle, new water. So I was like, tell me more. Tell me more about this. So she gave me a sample, but she lived an hour away, I lived an hour away from her practice. So with that, she told me about the machine, and I was like, ooh, this is expensive. I'm a single mom. How am I going to buy this? I got to buy this. I found a way. I think everybody, if there's a will, there's a way. And you have to get creative. So I got the machine. I started drinking the water. I started, doing her protocol as well. And with that, I quickly improved. Instead of sleeping 11 hours, getting up exhausted, I was sleeping more 8 hours. My painful mouth sores were dwindling down. I had more energy. I didn't feel exhausted. I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. And I was regular. My daughter had a problem with constipation, and she was regular. So that's when I just started sharing with my family, because I wanted them to know about it. And so many of all my family has a system. With that, they've had such improvements with their health. And my parents are now 91, cancer survivors. This water's helped them. My sister, there's stories that go on and on with each one of us. So don't ever be shy to share. I'm very blessed to introduce Mojka. She has just this, Dr. Mojka, she has this amazing gift and expertise of really caring about people and wanting them to heal. And I want to also introduce her very handsome son. Sean's here. Sean, please stand up. Girls, please stand up. I didn't say that, but sorry. Can you help it, Sean? He lives in Jacksonville, Florida. So Mojka is from Austria. She was born in Slovenia. Her grandparents really influenced her in natural medicine. And with that, she was trained in Europe. Her practice is amazing. She's been doing this for 37 years. God bless Mojka. And I'll correct Colt in a minute, because he hasn't been to her facility like I have, because I lived right by it. Amazing enough, as God works in mysterious ways, I lived 5 minutes from her office at the very beginning and then moved an hour away. So I knew Lake Mary. It's a very fluent area. It's beautiful. Her facility is 10,000 square feet, and it's a blessing. She's a clinical nutritionist, Chinese medicine, acupuncturist physician, botanical medicine, holistic practitioner, specializes in bioenergetic medicine. Whew. She's a braino. She is. And she just says it's quantum physics why Kangen works. It works in your cells. And with that, I am very blessed to have her here, and Mojka is going to now tell you the ins and outs of what I learned a long time ago, and more. And Colton, came into the picture with sharing the water, as well. So I'm very blessed. Of course, everybody knows my son. So Mojka, take it away.
Let's see. What goes back? Technology is not my favorite thing.
You can do it, Maria.
Next slide. Okay, I didn't press hard enough. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I have to do this for my own sake and for our license purposes. This is a disclaimer for the FDA that the FDA has not undergone evaluation for this program. That I base this presentation basically on my 37 years of experience with thousands of patients. Okay. This is going to be a little different from what you've heard today, but you have to remember that every one of us here is a human being that needs to live, needs to survive this century if we can, right? And we have a lot of challenges. So I wanted to give you everything that comes from my perspective, what I see in clinical practice every day, what affects people, because I have to deal with that and show them a way to get out of it. And everybody is affected. And it's getting worse and worse. And nobody's really pointing this out. We're just living with the fact that in the United States, we have lowest life expectancy rate, and we only number 58 out of all the nations. Even nations that do a lot of fighting have a higher life expectancy. So there's something wrong, and it's going downhill more and more. So by the end of this program, on my presentation, you will know everything that's affecting us, and then you can pick and choose what can you do about it. Because you can, with this water, it's so phenomenal, you can give somebody their life back if they only understand why they really have to drink this water, that there's really no other option. Okay, so if we look at, click on here. I guess it doesn't really show.
No, she wants the laser.
The laser.
She wants the laser.
Coming up. It's on green, but it's not coming up. That's better. Yeah. Okay, works. I'll have to step over to the side so I can personally see. If you look at the top 3 diseases that's on this chart, this year they estimate more than 2 million new cancer cases, right? See, lung and bronchioles, colon, prostate, breast in women, lung and bronchioles, and colon. Now they have something in common, all of those. All disease starts in the gut, right? Dr. Bernard Jensen, our clinical nutritionist from 70 years ago, always said all disease starts in the gut. And now we really understand what he meant by that. So when you look at these top 3, all these have to do with dysbiosis in the gut. And how did that happen? So let's go next. So the widespread contamination of our food and water, we might not always be able to control the environment, but we can certainly make our choices, and we can control what we eat and what we drink. Let's see. So there's only 3 essential steps. It's really basically simple. But as you go through it, it's a little bit more involved. But it's really simple if you just remember those 3 things that everybody needs to do. You have to have good nourishment, you have to have the best hydration, and you have to detoxify. Because sometimes the first two are not quite enough for what we have in environmental toxins today. Take, for example, why do I always recommend saunas? We consume approximately a credit card full of microplastics every day. So where did they go? Plastics just don't come out of the system. Basically, you have to heat them out of the body, right? So even water sometimes will not get plastics out. So it's a combination of things that you have to do. Let's talk about the cells. The cells communicate with each other by radio signals through the aid of clustered water. So what's clustered water? So it's a water that fits your shape of your cells. If you look at the bees and the beehives, they have a hexagonal shape. Everything in the universe is hexagonal, and so are our cells.
Yep.
So if your water is not clustered to the point where it can reach your cells, it will never reach the cells. And that's what the problem is with most waters today. So here's some things. I've used this slide actually 11 years ago. I found it, and I think it was great. Dr. Lorenzo did a lot of work with clustered water. And if you look at the last sentence, small hexagonal water clusters fit into and through the hexagonal channels in the cell membranes and inside the cell, to which they deliver nutrients and remove waste. So that water has a lot of functions. Okay, let's step aside a little bit for that one. Everything starts in the gut. We call it the gut microbiome. Some 100 trillion bacteria reside in the gut, and they break down fiber in particles. 80% of the microbiome is in the colon. 85% is beneficial bacteria for digestion and immune health, and they crowd out the good bacteria. So that's why that has to be in constant balance, right? And they make vitamins. So if you have no fiber there, you're also creating an imbalance. And you can see by this picture here, this is a healthy gut. And you can see this junction. This is the inside of your colon. It has little hair-like projections that actually move the food along. And they do that 24/7, right? And in here, you can see there's a little junction, breaking the junction. But what that means, now bacteria, parasites, chemical toxins, heavy metals, they can enter the bloodstream. They go through here, and they enter the bloodstream, and they go to tissues of your body. And that's how you become toxic. So the primary function that we have as health practitioners, we have to seal the gut lining, right? And how do we do that? We can't do it without removing the toxins. And you can never heal. You can never overcome a disease like cancer or something unless the gut lining is healed. Okay. So here's another word for dysbiosis, for microbiome imbalance is dysbiosis. These are some of the symptoms. Has anybody experienced any of these symptoms? So that means everybody has leaky gut, right? Some more than others. The ones that have really damaged gut would definitely have some major disease. And all these are the contributors. Okay, nowadays we know what are the worst contributors to a leaky gut. It's processed foods, gluten, wheat, sugar, artificial sweeteners. Some people think, okay, this is zero sugar or low sugar, right? It's always some artificial sweetener that they use. If they say zero sugar, look and see what the sweetener is, because some of these other sugar alcohols, they're even worse. For example, sucralose, right? Sucralose is Splenda, and it damages the gut if you just consume it one day, and in the laboratory, it took 6 months to bring the good bacteria back after one-time exposure of sucralose. So look at all your soft drinks. You almost can't find them without these sugars in them. Okay, or drugs, antibiotics, food additives, alcohol, environmental toxins of all sorts, lack of sleep, radiation. We're engulfed with radiation these days, all around us. Parasites, bacteria, fungi, and food allergies. So when you eat like this, right, you ever notice you wake up and you just can't think? You know, it creates brain fog because the gut and brain has a connection. Almost 90% of the stuff that happens in the gut is going to affect the brain. So here's another picture of the leaky gut. You can see a little bit clearer these openings here. And these are all the problems people will experience. Joint pain, fibromyalgia, fatigue, headaches, autism even, rashes, the first sign of some kind of gut dysbiosis. Weight gain, you cannot really lose weight unless you correct your gut. If you lose weight by some way that you just drink your so-called protein drinks, you don't do anything else, you're going to regain everything unless you detox. And autoimmune disorders, diabetes, Hashimoto's disease, lupus, that's all out of a leaky gut. Okay, how do you repair it? 3 ways. You clean up your diet, you add probiotics, and you drink the best water that you can get. The probiotics are very important. Change your probiotics often because there is trillions of bacteria living in your gut. If you give it the same acidophilus all the time, you'll have an overload of acidophilus, but you'll be lacking other bacteria. So the best way to get the good probiotics is fermented foods. You know, like sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurts, but make sure, ideally, the yogurts, if they're pasteurized and homogenized, the enzymes are dead. So they should be from raw milk, raw goat milk, raw kefir yolk, raw coconut milk. There's many ways that you can get it. When I was still doing my dissertation for my PhD in nutrition, I was studying the centenarians of the world. And some of them were total vegetarians, some of them were total meat eaters, they never ate any vegetables, they lived in cold climates like Siberia. You know? But there was 2 things that they had in common that I found. One of them was they all drank glacial waters from the mountains. And the second one was probiotics. They actually ate all kinds of fermented foods. They would take the stomach of an animal and they would put milk in there and let it ferment, and they would eat that on a daily basis. Those were the 2 common denominators that I found. Okay, so balanced diet is those 2 things. So does it mean that when you have a balanced diet, you have to be vegetarian or vegan? Not at all. What we find is people who are vegan or vegetarian, they eat so many carbs that they actually produce more inflammation in the body. They're more likely to even get cancer or even heart disease. They cause diabetes, they cause Alzheimer's, they call it diabetes number 3, right? Because it all comes from eating too many carbohydrates in the diet. And then it depends a lot on your blood type too. If you're blood type O, you cannot be vegetarian, your body can't handle it. You are a genetic meat eater. If you are from some kind of Indian descent or cultures that have always eaten more vegetarian food, you will probably handle it better. But you have to look at your blood type. I have on my system what I use for testing your blood types and your blood type diets. It comes up all the time, depending on where you're from. One of the best diets is a Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean diet is known to have 30% less heart disease and 20% or 25% less cancer. It's mostly the kind of a Greek diet where there's a lot of seafood, a lot of fish oils, fresh foods. You know, they buy their foods fresh on the market every day, and then they go home, they prepare it, and whatever's left over, they discard. They don't have refrigeration or never used to. Maybe they have more of that now, right? So that's a Mediterranean diet. It goes better with type A blood people than type O blood people. So in the clinic, we look at that. We look at what blood type they are, and if they have a condition like diabetes or something already, how much carbs they can actually consume. So what we're finding is most of the time, the top diets that will show up all the time is paleo diets. Well, paleo is primarily protein, right, and vegetables, no grains. Grains are highly inflammatory. So if you're trying to lose weight fast, give up the grains. And that includes rice and beans and all those things, right? That's mostly vegetables and protein. And then I also endorse, fruits as well. And there should be, the berries are the best. Other fruits are acceptable. So you have a varied diet. It's very, very important. And that's something you have to look at. Look at your biochemistry, look where it came from, look what your blood type is. How is your consumption of grains? Do you eat enough proteins? Most people don't eat enough protein. You cannot lose weight if you don't have at least half your body weight in grams of protein. Keep that in mind. you nourish and detox. Those two key factors, always there. So here's our environmental hazards. We've touched on some of these already. Some new things now, chemtrails. I don't know how many of you have heard of chemtrails.
Oh, yeah.
It's becoming really, really bad.
Let's talk about it.
And, you know, they release stuff in the air. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the coming slides here. But it's affecting everybody. It goes on all our food supply. You can eat clean, but whatever happens in the environment, you will have some of that go through your body. Household products and toxic skincare products. So many people disregard that. You know, I built my clinic primarily because, I mentioned briefly in our little talk earlier, because I saw people come in with women, especially with breast cancer, because they were using toxic skincare products. So I said, you know, women should be able to have a massage, a facial, whatever they like, you know, but it has to be clean stuff so they don't develop cancers. Then I read about a study in England where they took 450 women that had breast cancer, and they said the primary things that they found in the breast tissue when examined was skincare products.
Wow.
And there's a lot of chemicals that they do not allow in Europe that they are still allowing in this country here. For example, give me just one, there's going to be many. Titanium dioxide. Every sunblock has titanium dioxide, right? It's a neurotoxin. I've been talking against it for over 20 years. They just discovered that it causes colon cancer, was outlawed in Germany because it causes colon cancer, and neurological problems. And it's in every sunblock. Do you think they're going to take that off the market? Probably not. Okay. And of course, polluted water. So next. We're going to talk about genetically modified food. So this is our primary risk for cancer these days. Estrogen dominance. We call them xenoestrogens, fake estrogens. These are the signs we look at. You know, I'm an acupuncturist, so we look at tongue, we look at pulse, we look at visual signs, eyes, we look at the neck, we look at different visual signs because it gives us really early signs. And these dots is what we look for on people's bodies, on women's breasts. Now, conventional medicine will tell you, oh, they're just mast cells, nothing to worry about, right? I've seen a lot of people have these dots and they just all of a sudden diagnosed with a cancer. And what's kind of interesting too, sometimes it would be, if you see these dots on one side of the breast and not the other, that's the breast that's going to get the cancer. Wow. On the right side of the ovary versus the left, the right side gets the cancer, right? We've seen them when we examine the face, we look at the forehead on the side of the temples and you see dots there, you know that person's going to have a stroke. So they're really good visual signs. We learn a lot of the visual signs. Because the Chinese, you know, they've been looking at bodies for 5,000 years. So they said by the time you get a blood test back, you could be dead. So don't depend on that. Xenoestrogens will deposit as fat, right? Because the body is something abnormal for the body. So it's to deposit it in fat cells. That's why you can't lose weight unless you detox. So your water is the best way to quickly detox. So this is the pictures you'll see. Men have guts and have breasts now. I have actually 3 patients with breast cancer. They're men. Now, if you think about like beer, right? I mean, you have a beer here and there, okay. Beer is very high in natural estrogen. Hops is high in estrogen. So when you drink beer, you're going to get estrogen, right? Besides environmental toxins. So there's an interesting story. I had a patient that developed a breast cancer, and then she went to Ireland on vacation. And after about a month over there, she sends me an email. She says, it's so weird, but I'm starting to have the same sensations in my breast that I did before I got the cancer. And I started looking at what could she be doing there. She said, we eat all organic food. It's all grown on the land there. I don't understand what's going on. So I said, you must be doing something different than you weren't doing when you were here. She said, well, the only thing I can think of, I have a couple of Irish beers every week. Right? Well, you know, that did it. For someone who's already had a problem in the past, when she did that, and then when she gave that up, it went back to normal. So just tell you how sensitive your body really is and quickly it can respond to something. Okay, so here's just more pictures of endocrine disruption. And here's the fat cells. Now you have the same amount of fat cells then you had at age 25, even when you're 60 or 70, they just fill up and they shrink, right? That's how you lose weight, but you always keep the same amount of fat cells. Okay. So these are some of the worst chemicals in our environment. I think every one of you should be made aware of what's going on, because you're not going to hear it from conventional sources, because they don't really want you to know what's out there, you know. So Roundup, #1 chemical sprayed, it's called glyphosate, and pretty much 90% of our food has now glyphosate in it. Atrazine, I'm going to talk about that one, is the strongest endocrine disruptor that we have. We'll get to some slides in the following slides here. DDT was banned in 1972. It's still in every soil that they check. It has not left yet. Hexachlorobenzene, that's an insecticide, banned in 1966, still in every food that they check. And then this is an insecticide, antifungal. So here's Roundup, here's glyphosate, has been linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Monsanto paid out over $4 billion in damages already because it caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's still on the market. Still can walk to some of these places like Home Depot and pick it up, right? How many of you still spray Roundup outside for your grasses? You think you're not affected by it? It stays, you can breathe it in for a week, a couple weeks after you've sprayed. Causes liver inflammation, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, diabetes, obesity, autoimmune diseases, Parkinson's, neurological diseases, prions in the brain, they're like plastic brain, right? Destruction of the microbiota in the gut, and reproductive disorders. Glyphosate is banned in Europe because of its link to cancer. Another one is chemicals that we're all still exposed to over there. They get rid of it. Can you see how many things still contain it? Wheat, soybeans, 100% of soybeans made. Barley, oats, lentils, peas, canola, corn, flax seeds, alfalfa, rye, triticale, buckwheat, millet, sugar beets are the sugar, right? Cotton and potatoes, 90% of the oranges, 85% of the almonds, 85% of figs, 85% grapefruits, 85% pistachios. And then oat-based products, 43 out of 5 conventional products that they tested. 5 out of 16 organic products. So they can contain it too. And they took 21 samples of drinking water, all from the US, and look, 13 from the 21 samples were positive for glyphosate. Okay, so you watch them spraying the crops with their hazmat suits on, right? This is a good question by this girl. Do you eat this with a mask on? Okay, this company, Pesticide Action Network, classified 145 chemicals as environmentally hazardous in 2019 already. And how they classify them by these 4 categories, right? How bioaccumulative they are, that means how easily do they stay or get absorbed into your bodies. How persistent they are in water, soil, or sediment. And how toxic they are to aquatic organisms. And to the ecosystem, they call them neonicotinoids, so they destroy the bees. So a lot of the neonicotinoids were banned in Europe. So symptoms linked to gluten intolerance. This is so common today. I think nobody should eat gluten, unfortunately, because it's polluted, right? I do have a lot of people that they can't eat it here. They'll have a rash immediately when they consume it. They'll have headaches, bloating, rashes, diarrhea. And they go to Europe and they eat it there and they don't have a problem. Which now we assume is probably because of the Roundup and these chemicals that are still used here and genetically modified chemicals that they do not use in Europe. Okay. So I'll eat it over there, I will not eat it here. So these are the conditions that you can read. So diseases linked to gluten. In the clinic, we have also linked all these diseases to just the gluten intolerance. It might be the only thing. If you want to give up one thing first, give up gluten, maybe sugar as well, right? You can get some natural sugars, but that could just change your life totally, just those two things. Any autoimmune disorder that I ever dealt with was linked to a gluten intolerance. Atrazine, one of my favorites, because it's so bad. I met Dr. Tyrone Hayes. He did all the research with frogs from the environment. And what he said is that he was hired by Syngenta to prove that atrazine was a very harmless chemical. Found the total opposite, and then he left the company, and then they started discrediting him. He came to one of our seminars and was telling us all the work he did with atrazine. And he goes, how many people in this room think they don't have any atrazine in their system? And a couple hands went up, and he goes, meet me in the bathroom afterwards, I'll check your urine and I'll tell you. Because basically everybody has it, right? But you can see it was banned in the European Union in 2004 already. Right? Found in 90% of Americans drinking water. See, these are some of the facts that you can show people when you talk about the water. It alters the hormones, affects the immune system, causes permanent reproductive disorders. Male frogs exposed to just 2.2 parts, 5 parts per billion turned into females and had eggs. 2.5 parts per billion is less than the EPA limits in drinking water. And we call those it's an aromatase converter. So again, with men, right, the reason there's so much prostate cancer, they say every man will get prostate cancer if they just live long enough. It's because they have all these aromatase converters in their body. So you develop prostate cancer, then you go to surgery where they give you a Lupron or some chemical to block it. They know they have to block the aromatase, but they just block it. It doesn't eliminate it when you block it. Some of the female drugs that they use for breast cancer, again, they just block it. They don't eliminate it. What we do with alternative medicine, we make sure we eliminate those toxins, we detox them. That's what fast diet changes, water change is so important. And then we give them Chinese herbs or some of the other vegetables that are called DIMS, that helps to convert those bad estrogens. So sometimes the men, so they will convert testosterone to estrogen because of the environmental toxins that they have in their system. So they go to a doctor and they say, can you check my testosterone? I think I'm a little bit low. And he goes, yeah, you're right, you're low. So I'm going to give you some testosterone pellets and maybe another form of testosterone. Well, guess what happens when they do that? It immediately starts converting to more estrogen. Whoa. So it pushes you right into a prostate cancer. Right? So think about that when you ask for these hormone replacements. The effect of atrazine on reproductive health. So you see fertility issues, very big, cancer, ovarian, prostate, and breast, may cause birth defects or developmental delays, neurological effects on the nervous system, and weakening of the immune system. So if you look at these two frogs, the study done by Tyrone Hayes again, 1 in 10 male frogs turned into females had eggs. And when they mated, the men would mate, the male frogs would mate, and they could produce an offspring, and they were only males. 1 in 10. If you think about what's going on in the nation today, don't you think all this is affecting people as well, not just frogs?
Oh yeah. Stop.
So atrazine in drinking water, almost half of all bottled water comes from filtered tap water. Most of you know this already. Filtering does not necessarily remove atrazine and other herbicides. Bottled water can contain just as much atrazine as tap water. Boiling the water will only concentrate the pesticides.
Yeah.
Now, there are so many environmental hazards. I'm just touching on the main ones that everybody should know, right? So now we're going to go to a little bit heavy metals. All of you have heard these names: arsenic, lead, mercury, you can name it. Arsenic, for example, is in rice. You could eat brown rice, it has arsenic because the rice pulls the arsenic from the soil. So So it's very hard, very difficult to find protein shakes made with rice protein that don't have the arsenic in there.
Jeez.
So that's why we only use professional products, because we can ask them, give us your lab reports, where you have your metals found in the shakes. And we make sure that they're totally clean. We use only those sources. So be careful when you buy out there. Just to name one, but I could name you 20 examples for each one of these heavy metals. Mercury in the fillings. I don't know how many people still have mercury fillings in their teeth. Absolutely toxic. I mean, not just that they're toxic, neurologically toxic. If sometimes wherever that mercury filling is or a root canal is, it will cause a cancer in the corresponding organ wherever it has an energetic relationship. I've probably had over 100 cancers because of a root canal. Okay. So how do I see that, right? So I've done this testing, we call it bioenergetic assessment, for probably 30-some years. I've used various systems. I've used a very small one from Germany at the very beginning, and over time, as the systems improved, I would get newer ones. And it's very quick scan. We use the probe, we go through all the toes and feet, and now we have a cradle we put the hand on, right? It's more sophisticated. But I put my own program in there, so I can see a lot more than what's actually available with a system like that. And this is what I do. So when it comes up as a range with a person 10.3, so average range that I look for is 8 to 12. That's balanced. That means your immune system is able to fight, okay? If it's below that, many times I'll look at some autoimmune disorder, I'll probably deal with some cancer when the number is so low, because it means that now your immune system is crashing, it's giving up, it cannot come back. When it's high, it means there's just a lot of toxicity, right? But let's say you have a normal number. This would be a normal number, 10.32. And I can see the metals in here. Look at this number, right? That's how much, this is just an average person. Can you imagine somebody has a range of, let's say, 40, or I've seen them at 200 sometimes? These numbers can be over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. It's not unusual to see a number in the thousands. But you can see that everybody has these. Arsenic, right? Mercury, platinum, most common things to see. So what do they do? Okay, they enter our bodies through water, again, food and soil, some toxin exposure through the skin, and the increased exposure from chemtrails. It's a new thing that's going on now. Most common metals are these here, lead, cadmium. I've never seen a person who have lead in their system. Lead comes from old leaded gasoline. There's still a lot of lead pipes out there that have the water, where the water comes through into people's homes. Then, let's see, gastrointestinal tract, kidneys, nervous system, blood vessels. A lot of chronic kidney diseases because of that. And they don't let you focus, so you have mental focus problems. They cause neurological diseases left and right, birth defects, autism, anything you can imagine. And these are some of the symptoms. A lot of people don't even have these symptoms and they have high heavy metals, right? You start detoxing them, all of a sudden they get these symptoms because it's leaving the fatty tissues and it gets irritated as it comes through your liver and your bloodstream. So brain damage, yes. So heavy metals have been linked to Alzheimer's, a number of other conditions. Your brain is 90% fats. So it loves to store heavy metals there. And the other thing that happens in heavy metals attract parasites. There is not a person here that doesn't have parasites. Some more than others, right? As long as you have heavy metals, you'll have parasites. Some of the radioactive metals, you would think all this has already disappeared. We don't do that much nuclear testing anymore and all that, but there's tons of it in the environment. These are some of the names that I've just picked out from the testing that I do. Right? And just to understand how bad these really are, let me show you. Okay, remember the number 10, right? Look at this, ruthenium, 798, mercury, all of them way above the range that you want to be. Plutonium, you would think that would be gone from the environment. It still shows up. This is plutonium. Look at the half-life of this radioactive metal. Uranium, 4.5 billion years. plutonium 24,000 years or so, right? And those others here, and I forgot to, I neglected to put one in there. Radium is over 100 million years, billion years. Just never degrades. And this is a picture of a plutonium pacemaker that they used to do, right? When the plutonium is degrading, it creates heat, and that heat keeps the heart pumping. There's still about 50 to 100 of these out there. You're not supposed to own any, but if it's in the body and the people are still alive, right, they'll get it once the person dies. They're supposed to turn it in. But there was a lot of talk about cremating was a problem because it would actually cause problems for cremation with the plutonium exploding in there.
Wow. America.
This is manganese. Okay. So manganese is a mineral, it's absolutely essential for life. And when it comes to minerals and metals, they have to be in constant balance. If you have too much of something, it's a problem. If you have too little, it's a problem. I always caution people, be careful how long you take, let's say, minerals that you get on your own. You don't know what you really need. Let somebody else help you make the assessment. Don't just guess it and say, I'm going to take all these electrolytes and this and this and that. You're going to overload yourself with electrolytes. You take selenium, for example. Too much selenium can cause cancer. Too little selenium, you won't get rid of cancer. They have to be in the perfect balance all the time. And manganese is one of those that has to be always balanced, right? Most people are deficient, but then there's some people that are loaded with it. And what's interesting about this glyphosate, it disrupts manganese. What it does, it blocks your manganese in the intestines, so if you absorb it from food, whatever, and it puts it as a heavy metal into your brain. So there's your grains again, right? So this is all the functions that manganese normally has. Now, this is manganese deficiency. See, it can cause all these symptoms. Makes your salmonella grow 10 times more rapidly. Osteoporosis. Decreases sperm motility and increases infertility. Because all the neurological stuff and just depression, something like that. People just have depression because of manganese deficiency. Kind of interesting. So manganese toxicity causes similar symptoms. Look at this, really strange, right? So it's very difficult for us to figure out, what do I have, too much or too little? That's why it's so important that you get your nutrients from food and from the water. Okay, chemtrails. We also call it cloud seeding or ice cream creation. So here's a website that every one of you should take a look at if you haven't yet. Geoengineeringwatch.com. It's actually .org, I believe, or maybe it's .com. Don't quote me on that. But Dale Wigginton is the gentleman who's collected information about chemtrails for 40 years, and it's a really good site. They also call it solar engineering because they're trying to cool the weather down, right? And they do it with all these artificial substances that then fall back on the ground and poison us all. So let's see, can I play this? Who's here? I don't know. This should be a little short video. This is technical.
What?
Who can help with technical stuff? I need to play this video. It's not going to play, it's not on the web. No, it's not playing. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to give a short video, like a 3-minute video, but you can go on the geoengineeringwatch.org, .org, and you can look it up yourself. But it just explains what they're doing and why and what they're using and so on. Okay. So snow, you hear all the time how snow is not even melting, right? It just turns into this black blob because it's all got these particles from what they're spraying. So this is what they're spraying, aerosols, see? Using aluminum, magnesium, alkali metals, and alkali earth minerals, inorganic and organic nitrates, ammonium chlorides and perchlorides, carbon tetrachloride, chloroforms, and peroxides. And there's, I counted over 40 of them, different things that they're spraying. And when they manipulate, so you can take something like aluminum, And if you have a fine particle, like a nanoparticle, and it goes into the air, it cools the temperature down sometimes by 40 degrees in 3-4 hours. And then it causes this ice nucleation, and then you can make snow, you can make rain, or whatever you want to do, right?
Weather
So you can totally control that weather.
Yep. Saying that for decades.
Okay, so ice nucleation, cloud seeding. So these are some, we talk about some chemicals that they're using. See, these particles act as a nucleus for the formation of crystals in the atmosphere. And this will cause a cooling and drop of atmospheric temperature to many degrees. Okay, and this is a naturally occurring when you have dust from the ground or from plants, and will cause this cooling effect and cloud formation. But this is kind of artificially induced when they do these polymers and other metals. Now here's a word about graphene oxide. How many of you have heard of graphene oxide? Okay. Something you should always remember. It's a very interesting heavy metal. So it's found in all kind of medical equipment. It's a conductor insulator used in electronics, solar cells, batteries, and all kind of things. Touch screens, right? And what they're doing now, they're using 3D graphene oxide to spray into the atmosphere. And they are and then they use the surfactants, and this is the normal graphene oxide. If you see the graphene oxide, it's like a black material. And if you add your phone to it, I had a friend who had some of the graphene oxide, and we put a phone to it, and the graphene oxide starts moving like a spider. Because it's a biosensor, it's attracted to energy, electronics of all sorts, right? Now I'll come back to graphene. I just want to touch on this one a little bit more because this is kind of new, and a lot of people don't know about this yet. Deuterium. So it's one of those heavy metals that is naturally occurring in the ground and in some plants, but now they're spraying it in the air. Now that we have an excessive amount of that. The problem with deuterium is that it has 2 molecules of hydrogen, which makes the water much heavier. So that disrupts your mitochondria, which is your cell factory for energy. And that can actually cause disease, right? So too much deuterium will cause premature aging, immune dysfunction disease. The lifespan can be reduced by 25%. I've heard even higher figures than that. And cancer can set in. So radioactive metal. So there's a company actually in California I found, I didn't know too long ago, that actually makes deuterium depleted water. So they found that we have to reduce the deuterium in the water so that it doesn't cause, so that the cancer patients can improve more. So they make this deuterium depleted water, and they make them drink 1.5 quarts every day. And what they're finding is that it's improving the anti-tumor effect by 30 to 40% in those cancers. Just to take one of these radioactive metals and deplete it a little bit more than what's normally occurring. See, this is the normal thing. When you eat these vegetables, you're not going to get such a high dose of this deuterium. Right? It's just interesting how when you take something out of balance, how much damage it can actually cause. So here's another problem, more recent. Used to be cremation, right? Now it's called aquamation. So they're taking the bodies, and because of the green movement, they don't want to use cremating ovens anymore. They want to save on energy and gas, right? So they're taking potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide, which is a drain cleaner, and they're pouring it on a dead body, and that's how it dissolves the body. And then the bones stay behind, and they're very fine, and they're white, very clear, and then they grind them up. They either give them back to the family to disperse in the environment, or they're just using as a fertilizer. So now whatever that person's body had in their system is now going back into our water supply. That's where they dump it. So look this one up. I found out one in our neighborhood, there's one that's doing that definitely already. It's doing it in many more places. It's right in our neighborhood already. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
So this is what they say they do with the bones, see? So just what I just explained. Rinsing and drying the bones, they follow by mechanical process to pulverize them into fine powder, and then distribute it. Okay, now we go a little bit about graphene oxide. So dark field microscopy is something they do a lot in Europe because you can take a blood, some of you might have it done, one drop of blood, you magnify it 5,000 to 20,000 times, and you can see what the blood looks like inside. Usually you'll see red blood cells. These are red blood cells, and they float around by themselves, and they look pretty healthy in this picture. Then you'll see some bacteria or some heavy metals in between there, but it's still pretty normal. You also, somewhere there, see this little face on this little cell? That's actually a white blood cell. They actually eat other bacteria and other viruses. So that's a normal thing. Now, there are 26 companies that I could check worldwide that are doing this kind of testing now. And they're all finding the same thing. COVID vaccines, they find all these things in there, right? See that? Heavy metals of unknown origin or purpose. Cesium, barium, cobalt, chromium, titanium, aluminum, it goes on. And polymeric materials. Large structures, particles, crystals, fibers, flat shapes, square shapes, whatever, ribbons, and different forms of graphene oxide. Graphene oxide does not leave your system. Graphene oxide is a biosensor, so it attracts other heavy metals and it can form little nanobots. And they can now go into your brain and act as biosensors to 5Gs.
What?
So here's graphene as a biosensor in the medical field. You see how many things they're already using it for? And you never knew about it? Never knew about it until the COVID vaccines came out and we saw that they were in there, right? See, it's let's see, improving the sensitivity and selectivity of medical diagnostic tests. So it's been used for quite a while. So here's a picture of these nanobots and these filaments that they're seeing. See how translucent they are? They light up when you do dark field. And you see all these red blood cells that clump together with these filaments because the filaments will suck the oxygen out of the red blood cells. When your red blood cells stop carrying the oxygen and mineral capacity, you're going to get sick, you're going to get cancer, right? And you can see some of these, I have probably hundreds of pictures in my clinic, but you can see some of these, how they look. This is all abnormal constituents of the blood. And here's a nanobot. And there's millions of these, right? And they can duplicate themselves. And all they need is heavy metals and graphene oxide, and they make another copy. And now this is a blood, so this you can see it says unvaccinated blood. So because they're nanoparticles, you can shed those particles to somebody else if you got the vaccine, right? There's 1,400 studies showing shedding. When I test people, a lot of times they'll come up with rabies vaccine, and it's a person, it's not a dog. But I'll ask them, I say, do you have a dog who just got a vaccine? Yeah, our dog got the vaccine last week, right? So if you can shed a rabies vaccine, you can certainly shed this vaccine. But see what they did with this blood here? So they exposed it to a little bit electricity. Look what happened with that blood. And the metals just coagulated here. Jeez. And these are just filaments. They're no longer red blood cells. They no longer have any oxygen carrying capacity. And here's some other pictures. Because of timing involved, I couldn't bring a lot of these pictures. And when these little fibers link up together, see under weak electric current, this is what they do. They link up like a hair. And that's what they call Morgellons disease. You can look up Morgellons. There's metal fibers coming out of your skin. Very painful. It's very deadly disease. So do we have some chelators for heavy metals? We do. And sometimes water is not enough, right? You have to use other things. If somebody is really poisoned with these things, you have to act quick so they don't, develop some other neurological problem, whatever. And you can see these are some of the chelators that are used in our clinic, which we are a holistic clinic. And acetylcysteine, very effective for that. alpha-lipoic acid, zinc. You know, I just test and see which one does the person resonate with, which one do they need, and how much do they need. Some are botanicals, and some are other things like EDTA, which we've traditionally been used as an IV chelation, right? And then DMPS and DMSA. Those two definitely want to do under medical supervision. So here's back to blood. This is not actually a normal blood. This picture came from Dr. Anna Maria Michalcha, who does all the testing with dark field. And after they chelated the person with IVs, vitamin C IVs, EDTA, NAC, bromelain, stuff like that, this is what the blood looked like, right? And you can actually see a white blood cell perfectly normal again. And you might have to do it often. Because I had a patient that I detoxed, he couldn't even walk, he was falling all the time after he had 2 vaccines. And he got better, and he was so happy that after 3 months he stopped taking his regimen. A month later he calls me and said, well, I'm starting to get all these symptoms back again, what shall I do? I said, go back on the products, right? Because these nanoparticles, they reproduce themselves, the nanobots keep reproducing. So we learned a lot during this period, what it has. There's another thing that's actually found in these vaccines, and it's called SV40, which is the same cancer that was in the polio vaccine that caused cancer. They also found it in the COVID vaccine. Okay, so here's some other ways that you can do detoxification for the general public. I always tell them, look at all these things and try them out. Clay, I love clay. You can make your bath in clay. You can drink a little in water. It's a great chelator. We use a lot of homeopathy and electrolyte-reduced water. So what is electrolyte-reduced water? This is how I explain it. It has a negative ionic charge. It attracts positively charged ions. With heavy metals, toxins are positively charged, and then you can remove them from the tissues. You can choose various pH levels of water. So if someone has a particular problem, I'll change the pHs all the time, right? I actually test which pH the person would need at the time they're at my clinic, So it's quicker to remove things. And it does not deplete minerals from the body like reverse osmosis does, or distillation. And distillation, when it recondenses, all those chemicals that are vapor soluble, they're still in the vapor and they recondense into the distilled water. So you have more chemicals that way. Let's see. The ionization electrical charge creates stronger hydrogen molecules. So they actually sustain longer and stay in your body longer, they stay in your tissues longer. And it requires a superior plate technology to do that. If you have one of these plates, it has like a thief, right? The molecule never turns into a hexagonal shape. It just ruptures the molecule. So that's very, very important that we have this plate technology. And it's the best representation of a glacial water. Glacial waters were fresh waters from the mountains before the earth was so polluted, right? And when they run over the pebbles in the streams, they pick up oxygen, they pick up minerals from the pebbles, and that's a perfect glacial water, right? So when I found this water, the taste of it was like glacial water that I was used to from childhood. And then I could see the reduction of chemicals in people's bodies when they actually were on that water. So it's an essential part of my practice. I couldn't do without it if I didn't have this water. And here's something from the truth about cancer. Water protects vital organs, specifically bladder, colon, breast. Against cancer, you need more of this essential nutrient. They actually call it a nutrient. So here's an Ayurvedic saying. When diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. When diet is right, medicine is of no need. So here's a couple of paragraphs from the Bible. God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And in this one, do you know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. Okay, so we can shape our health, we can shape our future. So as we conclude today's journey through through the essentials of nutrition and hydration, let's remember that every meal, every sip of water is a step towards a healthier, more vibrant version of ourselves. Our bodies are gardens. What we eat, what we drink are the seeds we sow for our future well-being. Let's make choices that nourish not just the body, but also the soul, empowering us to live our lives to the fullest. Thank you for embarking on this journey with me. So.
Do you move around the applause for Mojka or not? All right, couple of quick announcements, right? So for tomorrow, we have a worship service.